Hi, it's just afternoon, so good afternoon to those joining us. We'll just give it a few minutes whilst people sign in. Our speaker will be joining us, but he has a slight technical glitch that his company system has decided to upgrade at exactly midday. So we will be starting slightly without him, but he assures us to be with you. So I'm going to be running the Slido poll today. So for those of you who are joining us, please do give us your views on the questions. This will allow Simon to get a judge of the knowledge in the room. So to go to Slido, you can do it one of two ways. For those of you familiar with it, you can go QR reader. Most people do it on their phones so that they have it standing by their main screen. But of course, you can use split screen if you want. If you're going to do that, you'll need to go to slido.com and put in today's code, which is LM221021, which is today's date. So for those of you joining us, please do use the chat facility. Let us know where you're from and perhaps your knowledge. That's always an interesting question. I expect a number of you, and I am certainly very interested to learn more about pre-manufactured value and how to validate it. So in terms of how we'll use Slido today, if you have questions for Simon, please do put them into Slido in the Q&A section. That will enable us all to be able to look at the questions. If anyone thinks they're of a question they'd like themselves to have answered, you can vote for it, which means it will pop up the list. We're also going to be using Slido at the end for your feedback on today. So please do feel free to, at the end, give us your opinion. It only takes about 30 seconds, not very long. We'll leave it open at the end. So if any of you want to give us feedback after we've closed, just do that through Slido. So I think what we'll do then, Abraham, let's get going and we'll look at the poll. So let's have the first question up. I think some people are already probably at it. So how would you rate your understanding of pre-manufactured value? Hereafter going to be referred to as PMV. So you've got three choices. If you would rate your understanding of it high, please choose high. If only medium or average, or if low, please give us an answer to one of those. Okay, so let's go to the second question, please, Abraham. Do you know PMV calculations in detail? So you have a choice here of yes or no. I see that some people have already completed all the questions, which is thank you very much. But for those of you who are not, let's go on to the third one, please, Abraham. Do you understand the Construction Leadership Council stroke CE, that's Construction Excellence, wider project outcomes? Answer yes or no, quite simple. And the fourth question. Does your organization measure and monitor construction performance outside of cost and program? Simple answer, yes and no. And on to our fifth question, please. Do you see a link between MMC systems, PMV, and better outcomes? So if you've completed that, please push your send button. Okay, so about 20 people have completed it, which is super. Thanks very much. Unfortunately, Simon hasn't yet re-signed in. So What I'll do is I'll run through the answers here, and then I'll quickly run through it again when he joins. Okay, so how would you rate your understanding of pre-manufactured value? So let's see what the knowledge in the room is. Oh, right. Okay, so it's about 50-50. With high actually unfortunately being the lowest score. So I think you're all here like me to learn much more about it. So that'll be interesting for Simon to see. So on the second question then, I think it probably goes along with the first. Do you know PMV calculations in detail? The answers, majority of the room, certainly no. Okay, the third question. Do you understand the Construction Leadership Council CE, Construction Excellence wider project outcomes? So 70% of the room say no. Now that was one question I know that Simon felt that it'd be a strong yes. So he'll be interested to see that when he joins us again. Question 4. Does your organization measure and monitor construction performance outside of cost and program? So 60% no. And lastly, the last question is, do you see a link between MMC systems, PMV, and better outcomes? Vast majority, almost the whole room, say yes. So thanks very much. I'm going to run through that again when Simon rejoins us. Unfortunately, I'm not going to be able to say much more. We just really need to get Simon back in the room. So all I can do is apologize and say, for those of you who want later in the session, to save us time now, if you want a continuing professional development certificate for today, let's put that up, Abraham. This is where you will be able to go for it. So for those of you who want to go to that, you need to go to MyProPass and register. And then if you put in the code CE823, you will get a certificate for today. And all I can now ask is, Abraham, if you put up for next week's event, we can also cover that point now so that we can make the most. So next Friday, we have Rob Sargent from Stride to Ground. Stride to Ground is an firm of architects looking at B Corp certification, the benefit it brings, your social value, how to do it, and a journey your business will need to take to make it a reality. So if you wish to register for that, please do so by going to Conversations That Matter or by Leaders Meets and registering. So thanks very much. I'm hoping now that we have our panelists, but unfortunately we don't. So I think all we can say at the moment is, please stay here. I'm going to give him a ring and see where he is. So I'll be back as soon as I can. Hi to everyone. I'm very sorry that of this. I've just tried ringing Simon. I cannot get through to him, so I only hope he's coming back online. So please bear with us. We'll keep trying, and as soon as we get him, I'll bring him back. Many thanks. Bye. Hi to everyone. I'm very sorry. I haven't yet been able to get hold of Simon to see whether he's going to rejoin us. I think we'll bear with me for another 3 or 4 minutes. If not, I think we may have to postpone today and ask people if they'll rejoin us for a rearranged time for this. So please bear with me. Thank you, Simon. Glad to see you back. I was just beginning to try calling you.
Okay, sorry about that.
That's no problem.
Oh,
we have done the poll. We'll put the answer.
great.
We have done it. I have run through it with everyone to try and pass the time, but let's just quickly run through it with you so that you can see the answers. So this is the answers you've got. So let's go to question 1.
Great.
How do you rate your understanding of pre-manufactured value? The answer is majority of the room is low to medium, with high being quite low. So
yeah.
So I think people are going to be very interested in what you want to say. Do you
Sure.
know PMV calculations in detail?
No.
No. Question 3. Do you understand the Construction Leadership Council CE wider project outcomes? You thought they may, but surprisingly 70% of the room said no.
Okay, that's interesting. Yeah, okay, thank you.
And question 4. The answer is no to the majority.
Yeah.
So I think you have a room here which we confirmed by 5, but they do see a link. So I think everyone's here to learn.
Okay, good. Well, that's a really good poll. Thank you. And thanks for everyone's patience. Yeah, so that's really interesting. So that helps me kind of position what I want to talk about with you now. Would you like me to present, Howard?
Yes, I would. I think people have been sitting on the edge of their chair waiting for this, not watching silence and me. So please carry on. Thanks very much, Simon. Great.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you. Just bear with me. I'll pull the presentation up. Okay. Good morning, everybody. I know good afternoon, I should say. I know I can't speak to you at the moment, but I just want to check in, Howard, that my screen can be seen. Is that right?
And I don't know whether you want to change, because we're seeing your notes on the side here. So next slide.
Bear with me a second. Just bear with me a second.
I think if you go into
Sharing. Yeah. Okay, hopefully this will work. This will work now as I move through things. Can I just check with you, Howard? That's working.
Yeah, that's working fine.
Great. Okay. Good stuff. Thanks, everybody. Okay, so this afternoon's session is around pre-manufactured value. Thanks for everybody's participation on understanding of PMV. What I would say straight off the bat is that Castor are focused on pre-manufactured value as a mechanism. It is not the outcome. The outcome we're looking for are improved projects, improved outcomes for projects. There's wider measures, which I'll go through now. So by way of introduction, what is pre-manufactured value? It is effectively a very simplistic calculation. It measures the volume of materials, the amount and cost of materials divided by the gross construction cost. All materials, a lot of people confuse this. It is a proxy measure to understand the potential move to the off-site construction industry as we move forward, and is used to understand that properly and work that through. So, for example, if you have MMC use or a higher MMC use, it's likely that you'll have a higher PMV use. Effectively taking the labor and material, the labor element of one site into the factory environment enables a higher pre-manufactured value. We set about putting some rigor to this now around the calculation. And I won't go into too much depth today, but people are welcome to connect with me in the future. And we calculate that through using RICS, RICS, NRM principles, and look at preliminaries, site labor, and the material value. But we also proportion risk and overhead and profit of a given project, given building, given project, to optimize and calculate that actual PMV level. So the gross pre-manufactured value calculation incorporates prelims, and that includes plant and all elements of prelims. To proportion that out so we regularly understand the impact of site prelim costs as well as the actual labour and material costs. As I said right at the start, PMV is a proxy. It's just that. It's our goal to improve outcomes for the construction sector. And the list at the bottom there is focused on the outcomes that we believe will improve over time for the use of optimizing pre-manufactured value. And I use carefully the word optimization because it's just that. It doesn't mean a higher PMV necessarily will give every one of these better outcomes. It means you have to optimize for a given outcome. And we talk about those, and they're in line broadly with CE measures as predictability of outcome. So that's a measure of cost from when it was estimated to the final account. Similarly, the program from when it was estimated to the final account. And similarly, productivity as a measure of labour usage on site and waste reduction, as well as quality performance, snagging, number of units over GIA, and speed on site of delivery of a given building. Equally, we're starting to evolve transactional costs, which are effectively looking at the vertical integration of organisations as we move through the evolution of different businesses. Community disruption, that is meant as a mechanism of measuring what's happening in the community around that site. So, for example, if you have an MMC that enables a faster delivery on site, you can have less noise, less noise on site, less dust on site potentially, and less deliveries, for example, less disruption to the community around it. With the principles of applying a higher PMV, it usually means that you are materially creating more value off-site, But it can also mean that you're improving the on-site construction installation processes. So on that basis, the labour usage goes down normally for a higher PMV, and that will add to the site health and safety risk assessment in doing so. So I just want to give you that introduction. It's important that we focus on those outcomes and improving those outcomes, and we are certainly correlating those outcomes now, those better outcomes, to different optimized pre-manufactured value levels. CAST and the wider MHCLG definition framework use this definition framework to estimate and optimize PMV. And we do this by working through the MMC category framework, which is volumetric at 3D level. Category framework 2 is 2D structures like panelized solutions. We use componentry, structural componentry at manufacturing MMC level 3. And the wider use of other categories, including category 5. So there's non-structural assemblies, including bathroom pods, for example, or utility cupboards on the M&E side. And the site level, importantly, and this is often missed in the MMC definition category framework, the site level initiatives are really focused on improving the product-led systems, but also the actual processes of labour reduction through lean use, for example, or through digitalisation. If you like, the installation part of using a DFMA approach and optimizing a DFMA approach. So pre-manufactured value works in combination with the MMC framework, definition framework, and structured to optimize that approach. The opportunity for the manufacturing sector, relevant to residential and the wider use, is to consider what this might do from a volume perspective. So if you're a manufacturer, or indeed if you're a contractor who has relationships with significant manufacturers, this has the potential to optimize that approach. And I talk very freely about the normal level being somewhere between 40 and 45% pre-manufactured value at the moment in the UK, possibly slightly higher in Scotland. That means on a given residential sector level, it's around 30 billion or 27 billion, this suggests, is that 11 billion of that spend is currently with manufacturers and the supply chain, logistical supply chain, and 16 billion of that is with the contracting element. Of course, all contractors manage that 27 billion to complete the build. But the swing, if we move to say a 55% measure, would mean that manufacturing takes the bulk of that spend and becomes more influential in working through the residential sector. And that moves the dial effectively. It moves the dial of influence. It also moves the dial of volume opportunity for major manufacturers in the UK and overseas who are providing solutions for the UK market. I also touch on there about the upward cost pressure we're currently facing, relevant to material supply and for COVID and Brexit reasons. But we believe that upward cost pressure will continue in the sector, and only when we optimize manufacturing plants at volume level will and gain that utilization of a factory, full factory, that we will start to see waste and cost reduction opportunity. So big opportunity here to fill. The premise of this is to fill factories, is to understand the opportunity of lean manufacturing, better controlled environments will deliver a more controlled place. We're still in that place where most factories aren't full and most factories aren't necessarily automated and haven't occupied that delivery, that optimization area. But this swing we're suggesting will work through that. To touch on where we are currently around policy, CAST have been spending a lot of time working through this policy and this strategy with organisations, and Way back in 2015-16, Mark Farmer launched his review of the labour model and Modernise or Die report, which featured pre-manufactured value. And since then, organisations like the one I chair, the Construction Leadership Council, are focused on performance characteristics. And this is also in line with a lot of the Constructing Excellence original Latham and Egan principles around better outcomes, better measures, but also widens that too. And so in here we have the birth, if you like, of big sustainability measures that weren't there, say, 20 years ago, like carbon and energy reduction and at operational level, and also quality, productivity, and the use of digitalization. So we have shifted in the 20 years from where we are constructing excellence, but also health and well-being of construction workers and people who are going to be in those buildings. All those outcomes are relevant, we believe, just as relevant as the cost and predictability outcomes around cost and program. And it's our view that the sector, our clients, are looking for those improved outcomes, speed, productivity, and in turn they will result in a better sector and better skills for people who work in it, as well as better quality of delivery of projects. It's evolved since then, and recently, in the beginning of this year, March time this year, pre-manufactured value is now incorporated into the capital funding guide for MHCLG and Homes England, relevant to the use of PMV across the £7 billion affordable housing programme. It's been a significant change. And in there, we talk about the use of the MMC category framework and the delivery of a 25% MMC, but importantly, the goal of trying to achieve a 55% level PMV. And those organisations, those strategic partners and registered social landlords have now been placed in September and have received or will receive additional scoring for that funding profile, but also where they've asked for, where they've committed to 55% PMV, they will receive additional funding and grants for the delivery of those projects. So that's the framework around policy. We're working with Scottish Government agencies as well and other agencies around the UK to deploy PMV as a proxy to give these better outcomes that we talk about. The influence that we are seeing now across businesses is key. The use of pre-manufactured value in the marketplace to deliver those better outcomes and using an MMC strategy works throughout the supply chain. And every partner involved here can have a significant impact, whether it be around placement and policy and strategy at client and local authority level, or the standardization of the delivery of homes and wider opportunity in wider sectors, or schools, delivery of those through an MMC framework, enhancing it through digital construction at design level, optimizing risks, and selecting the right supply chain. And that's important, supply chain, to select the right supply chain through, we believe, through this methodology to help to optimize the approach. I want to just talk briefly about the difference between PMV and MMC as a strategy. We see organizations focusing on a percentage of MMC in their business, for example. Where we see the difference as a measure around pre-manufactured value is there an opportunity to optimize the MMC strategy approach. So an MMC strategy may or may not increase the gross construction value of a project. PMV, we work with that to optimize the actual gross construction cost as well as the delivery by looking at the best overall system outcome and approach. We do that initially by using our PMV estimator. And this just gives you some quick examples. Broadly at the moment, our PMV estimator delivers on a roughly 40% for a residential accommodation using traditional techniques. And if, an example, we were to move that to a closed panel timber frame, then that would in turn, an open panel timber frame, that would shift the pre-manufactured value up by 5%. There's a couple of things in here. The pre-manufactured value exists now as a measure because there are materials that are delivered to site and used. We're just looking to optimize this for given typologies and given approaches. And we do that with our clients, and we would like to profess to do that for many clients by looking at, typically on a given project, a client outcome around placemaking or sustainability. That might be a typical client brief, and optimizing the approach with the design team and the contractors relevant to those measures that I talked about before, those outcome measures, those quality measures, those waste measures, those embodied carbon measures. And we use the MMC definition framework to do that. PMV is the proxy to enable that. The real outcome here is getting better projects delivered. The recent DFMA Plan of Works overlay that RIBA launched in September builds on this. DFMA is obviously a strategy of design and thinking through the production of the building right from scratch and how that's going to, from a process perspective, operate. And I'm pleased that we now see the DFMA overlay in place. And this touches on the MMC definition framework. And you can use that incorporating pre-manufactured value to give those better outcomes using MMC advisors and the advisory strategies that you can deploy across the board. And this supports that mechanism to assist in optimizing the whole workflow and having an impact on the selection of MMC and wider products, but also on the selection of installation mechanisms and planning that for careful delivery, and in turn has an impact on the pre-manufactured value. On the manufacturing side, we are now offering a validation service which effectively looks at the way individual manufacturers impact on pre-manufactured value to try and help organizations to achieve high levels or optimize levels for a given typology. And we do that through a mechanism of standard house typology typically, or standard typologies, supplemented with a given build typology. So it might be a category 2 closed panel timber frame with an I-beam or even a roof cassette system, which would enable a higher PMV and in turn enable a higher speed of production if that's the desired outcome, or an improved process and predictability of program. So we do that through that mechanism, and in turn we optimize the MMC strategy and map out those predictable outcomes across from manufacture up. And that tends to look like this. We work through elementally what to do, and we work through a position of elementally understanding what level, and then at package level, how that's going to be optimized, and creating the actual PMV calculation. This gives an opportunity to look and focus on relevant products and complementary products that will fit with a given typology for a given manufacturing organization. And for those who are going through this supply chain proprietary validation mechanism, optimize an approach to delivering a given typology with their systems and work out the future product development initiatives that will best impact both the gross construction cost, but also the MMC strategy to deliver for a given client or a given typology. I've pretty much rattled through that. Howard, that's the end of my presentation, but it'd be great to take some questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Simon. We've actually got a question that's come through. It may be a bit of a statement. It comes from Fred Carter. I've heard that major contractors with interests in open panel timber framed companies are now lobbying the government to relax the 55% minimum PMV requirement for MMC, which they are struggling to achieve. Have you heard this?
The truth is, no, I haven't. I haven't heard that. I haven't heard that particular statement, Howard, before. No, I can understand why they might want to do that, but I haven't heard that particular statement.
Tony Woods makes a comment to everyone on it. The closed panel timber frames struggles to get to 55% PMV. Do you want to make any comment on that? That seems an interesting one.
Yeah, so the positioning of 55% PMV by Homes England was in part about evolving the approach of closed panel and open panel timber frames. And in some cases, that's certainly the case. We typically see closed panel timber frames at around 50 to 52, 53%. Our estimator says that. In order to get to the over 55%, you have to have often complementary systems like roof cassettes or staircases, and also consider the overall servicing / M&E approach to achieve the 55%. What we're trying to do here, we believe that with Homes England, 55% is a good value. Going any further would have been too much of a stretch. It's to move edge forward sectors into this more closed panel approach.
Okay, thanks. I don't know whether that sort of fully answers or whatever Fred and Tony's points, but if Fred and Tony want to come back, please do go into Q&A and put another question forward, or if you want to come into the conversation, I'm sure we can bring you in. So let's go to the questions we've got. They're all anonymous, so I can't bring anyone in. How do you see as the link between better outcomes, MMC and PMV? How do you see as the link between better outcomes, MMC and PMV?
That's for me, Howard. You right? For me to answer?
Yes, please.
Yeah, sure.
That one, so.
Yeah, no, just making sure I understand.
Yeah,
so
you.
Yeah, sure. So if we consider, say, program predictability, for example, a higher PMV means two things usually. It means an optimized MMC approach, but it also means an optimized on-site labor strategy and preliminary strategy. And so through that particular mechanism, the use of PMV helps to optimize the actual predictability from, say, program plan, that's a REBA stage 2 or 3, say 3, and actually completed program. And so that's one area. Another area is around speed. If speed is to be one of those better outcomes that a client desires for sales rate or for another reason, then a higher MMC strategy, higher use of MMC usually delivers a faster on-site process. There are two examples. There are other examples, similarly with waste and health and safety. The less time on site, the less risk and the less people on site, health and safety outcomes should improve. And we're starting to see that come through. Hopefully that answers the question, Howard.
Yeah, I think it does. If anyone wants to add more to any of these, please do go into Q&A and put in any other questions. So let's have the next one, please. Abraham, yeah. How do you see PMV being deployed through the different organizational types, clients, designers, contractors, and supply chain? Quite a lot of questions in that one.
There's a lot there. And I think I touched on it in my presentation. I definitely had a slide on this in my presentation. we see the proxy being placed around a policy level, whether it be national government or local authority level or individual procurement team level. And that drives a usage, if you like, of more MMC materials and better organizational site labor, better transactional approach. And those organizations are in turn incentivized then to do that. So clients, for example, the clients that we're working with and their designers are looking for their outcomes on their projects, and there might be wide outcomes around sustainability or about placemaking. There could be a number of things. And the designers respond to that increasingly with a MMC strategy. This is the way we see it, and how that's being deployed through very much calculated methodologies and working through projected outcomes, measurable level. How do we achieve faster production? How do we achieve a lower carbon energy, a better material quality results on site, and working through the way that's being deployed in the supply chain. And certainly the contractors and supply chain are starting to respond to that. We're seeing now and understand what needs to be done and how it needs to be done. And this MMC/PMV strategy mechanism helps to bring this together in a controlled way to deliver those outcomes. And you can work up and down the supply chain to enable those better outcomes. So I'm not quite describing that perhaps, Howard, but it's effectively in design and project teams and deploying mechanisms of design and briefs and project management mechanisms to deliver those improvements, as well as specifically working with individual contractors and supply chain to bring that together for a given client or a given project.
Indeed. I just a sort of naive question I have. In terms of, before we go to the next one, with the government looking much more for sustainability in the new hospital, it's going to build the new hospitals they want to build, lower CO2, etc., and various factors around labour, supply chains. Do you see this impacting sort of the whole of the PMV calculation?
Howard, would you mind repeating that again, just so I've got it clear in my mind?
Yes, I mean, with now the government, I mean, if we look at the government's hospital building programme, which it's pledged to, it has come back a bit, as far as I understand, because it wants to build the new hospitals using better sustainability, etc. But to actually meet this is going to increase costs. But how do you think people will look at this when we have labour shortages, we have supply chains issue? How do you think this will affect the percentages that are being talked about?
The PMV percentages? Harry?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. So I guess this is an opinion. The drive for the use of PMV in the healthcare sector has come before the residential sector in part, and I think it will take time to work through. I think it'll have a short-term impact on material cost, but in the long term, the medium to long term, I think the mechanisms and the standardization of products will improve for that sector, and the volume will therefore improve, and this will have a settling effect around cost optimization, material value to the contractor and to the end client will flatten, if you like, and possibly in time will even go down. I use that very loosely, but I can see that potentially happening across the NHS sector. Okay,
thanks. So that leads into the next question. If the bar is initially raised to 55%, is there an ultimate PMV percentage? Will it vary from sector to sector?
I think it will. Straightforwardly, it depends on a number of things. I like the word optimum because PMV, in my opinion, shouldn't always be higher. putting aside the sector transformation and the skill changes required to help people be in a safer environment offsite, then the typology level, the build typology level, then there'll be an optimum approach for a given project. And that will also depend on procurement. It will depend on the model, the business model of the organizations delivering that building, with its different vertical integrated models or different models across the board. But equally, it will also depend on the manufacturing sector responding to the approach of those given typologies and standardizations. So there's a number of factors, I think, in there. I do like the word optimum. I don't necessarily think it always means higher for a given build type. I think it means the right place for the right projects at the right time for a given typology and system approach.
Okay, thanks very much. We have another question now. Do you see this new calculator increasing the usage of category 1 off-site volumetric housing, which will achieve less than 70% PMV?
I think it's achieved more than 70%.
She achieved more than, sorry.
Yeah, it's okay. I do think we'll have an impact on category 1. The calculation approach will have a positive impact on those category 1 manufacturers as volumetric providers being increased. Again, I would stress, I think it's about build, typology, project type, which will impact that. And over time, I think we'll further understand the different systems and optimize those systems for the different typologies and different projects, as well as understanding the supply chain capability and capacity base to deliver on that. I do think it will enhance category 1 offsite volumetric. I do think that will happen, but not exclusively to category 2. I think there's a lot to play out around category 2 and also category 5 too.
Thank you.
Thanks.
We've got one more question at the moment, so let's take the next one, please. What strategies should we deploy for enabling better outcomes through procurement?
Yeah. So I think we've got to be really careful on this particular one, because we need to optimize the approach for a given sector, a given typology, a given project, and it's a careful balancing act here. To blanket suggest a number around pre-manufactured value is not necessarily the right approach. And we need to be really careful how we deploy that. So my goal is certainly with the 55% with Homes England, we think that's a good level for the sector to focus on, to evolve those category 2 and other systems around that to deploy better projects and better outcomes. But for procurement, we see our time spent at Cast is working through a given client's portfolio and understanding how we procure for their portfolio of projects, optimizing the position. It's not always the same. In fact, it's rarely the same. It's about optimizing the position, the MMC strategy, and the related PMV score to give those given clients. On the public sector side, it's harder, because generally, there's a deployment of procurement in a more simplistic level, at strategy level, and it needs more learning, and it needs more application, and as we learn to deploy better procurement and evolve our procurement strategy.
We have we have one more question at the moment, and so does a higher PMV necessarily mean less man and more machine? That's the first part. And then social value impact.
Some good questions here, Howard. Really good questions, and making me think on the spot. That's great. So does it necessarily mean? Not necessarily, no, because it depends what you mean by man, because it could be man in the factory delivering those material systems rather than machine. And it could also be man on site. I kind of want to say human, if that's all right, rather than man. But yes, so you can optimize a PMV level by having man in a factory and man on site, but you're likely to have over time, a higher gross construction value. If we're to optimize and look at the effectiveness and efficiency and productivity of both the factory and the site areas for the supply chain and for construction site, then it will ultimately, I think, mean more machine, but not yet. Not yet. And we're far from that, in my opinion, because the first step is to move more people into a factory move more product and system build into a factory environment. And then usually in order to build a business around that, you have to get volume first before you can invest in machine. So that takes time to pull through. The second part of that question, social value impact, the wider definition of social value about people, off-site versus on-site. Certainly we think it's a better environment off-site. A very simplistic answer, but secondly, on social value related to, say, employment and better employment, I think it'll have an impact there. And apprentices, which usually social values are accustomed to, I think it will have a better impact, a higher PMV on social value. I think it will. For health, employment reasons, as well as many other reasons. Thanks, Howard.
Got one more question that's come up, I think.
They're coming thick and thin now. It's great.
Well, we're getting near the end, but anyway, do you see bricks and blocks as MMC Category 2 products, as they are manufactured off-site with labour to install? I think it should be on-site.
This is on-site.
Yeah.
Yeah. So. No, I'm afraid is the answer to that. MMC Category 2 is predominantly the panelized formats and bringing materials together off-site. Certainly, when the cladding system's put on in a factory environment, and if that were to use bricks or brick slips, then that would formulate as part of Category 2, but not separately in that way. No. But bricks and blocks contribute to the PMV. We have a typical traditional PMV level with normal material traditional construction of 40%. So they do contribute, but they're not exclusively part of Category 2.
Okay, thank you very much, Simon. I think that actually concludes all the questions we've got, unless anyone wants to put one in. So I'm actually going to say thank you very much, and look forward to any more questions briefly. Otherwise, we'll carry on. I've already gone through looking at people for continuing professional development certificates at the beginning, but I'll remind you, if you'd like to get one for today, please go to MyProPass and enter CE823. And for next week, if you'd like to register by going to our website, we're going to be joined by Rob Sargent from Stride to Glown, who's going to be looking at B Corp certification. So I don't think we have any more questions. So Simon, I'd like to thank you very much for your contribution today. And thank you for having a panic at the beginning, but being able to come back. Okay, I think you handled it very well. So thanks very much.
I think maybe you explained, but my computer did a restart and I couldn't stop it. So thank you.
Interesting time to choose AM rather than PM, I'd have thought, but there we go.
Yeah.
So I hope it didn't distract anyone's interest and fascination in today's topic. And thanks very much for an in-depth look. I'm just going to say thanks very much for everyone and have a great weekend. And see you
Thank you, everybody. Thanks, Howard.
Thanks once
Thank
again,
you.
Simon. Thank
Bye-bye.
you. Bye.
Thanks.